When I first boarded my flight to London about 18 months ago, I was completely convinced that moving to the UK would be a breeze. I mean, we speak the same language, right? We watch the same movies. We share so much history. How different could daily life actually be? Well, let me tell you, I was literally shocked. Within my first 48 hours of living in my little rented flat, I realized that Great Britain might as well be another planet when it comes to the tiny everyday things. There are so many quirks here that Americans back home simply refuse to believe are real until they see them with their own eyes. It is not just about the accent or driving on the left, it is about how society is organized, how homes are built, and how people interact with their environment on a Tuesday afternoon. We need to talk about this because the level of daily culture shock is real, and it starts the second you walk through the front door of a British home. Let us start with the first thing that made me stop dead in my tracks during my house tour. I walked into the kitchen looking for the pantry, and right there, nestled perfectly between the refrigerator and the kitchen sink, was the washing machine. I stood there staring at it, waiting for the letting agent to explain the joke. In the US, we would never dream of doing our laundry next to where we cook our eggs. Laundry belongs in a basement, a dedicated utility room, a garage, or at least a closet down the hall. But in the UK, having your washing machine in the kitchen is completely standard. At first, I thought it was just a weird quirk of my specific flat, but then I visited my friends and my colleagues and realized it is everywhere. The historical reason behind this actually makes a lot of sense when you look into it. Most British housing stock is quite old, especially the Victorian and Edwardian terrace houses. These buildings were constructed long before modern plumbing or domestic appliances existed. When washing machines finally became household essentials, the only room with the pre-existing water pipes, drainage, and tiled flooring was the kitchen. So instead of tearing down brick walls or sacrificing precious bedroom space, they just slotted the washer under the kitchen counter. It is highly efficient, but I still feel incredibly strange tossing my dirty socks into a machine while my toast is popping. The plumbing shocks did not stop there, which brings us to the second bizarre thing. I went to wash my hands in the bathroom sink, and I was confronted with two entirely separate faucets. One faucet for freezing icy cold water, and another separate faucet for boiling, skin scalding hot water. There was no mixer tap. If you want to wash your hands with warm water, you have to plug the sink, fill the basin with a mix of both, wash and then drain it. Or you do what most Americans end up doing, which is a frantic high-speed hand dance, moving back and forth between the freezing stream and the scalding stream, hoping for a statistical average of warm. I was baffled. Why on earth would a modern developed nation refuse to combine their water streams? The explanation goes back to the post-World War II housing boom. Back then, cold water came directly from the mains and was perfectly safe to drink. Hot water, however, was heated in a local boiler and stored in a giant tank in the attic. Because those attic tanks were often open to the elements, dust, bugs, and rust could get inside, meaning the hot water was technically classified as non-potable and potentially contaminated. By law, to prevent any dirty attic water from siphoning back into the clean drinking water mains, the hot and cold systems had to be kept strictly separate. Even though modern boilers make this setup completely unnecessary today, the tradition of the double tap lingers on in millions of older British properties. If you really want to see an American get passionate, ask them about the third thing on our list, which is the great electric kettle debate. Before I moved here, I heated my water for tea in the microwave like a normal American. When I told my British flatmate this, she looked at me as if I had just admitted to a major crime. Here, the electric kettle is the undisputed king of the kitchen. It is the very first thing people buy when they move into a new place. And when you see one in action, you quickly realize why. They boil water almost instantly. Back home, electric kettles exist, but they are incredibly slow, which is why most Americans do not bother. This actually comes down to a fundamental difference in our national electrical grids. In the United States, our standard household outlets run on 110 volts. This limits the maximum power draw of a small appliance to around 1500 watts. In the UK, however, the entire power grid runs on a whopping 230 volts. This means a standard British outlet can safely deliver up to 3000 watts of power. Because of this massive boost in voltage, a British electric kettle boils water twice as fast as as an American one. It is so efficient that the national grid actually has to prepare for massive power surges during the commercial breaks of major television events because millions of Brits all turn on their kettles at the exact same second. Now, not all of these shocks are frustrating. The fourth thing on our list is actually something I wish we would adopt in the States immediately. I am talking about the sheer bliss of inclusive pricing and tableside card machines. When you walk into a British shop and see a price tag that says £10, you walk up to the counter, tap your card, and pay exactly £10. The tax is already built into the displayed price. In the US, our state and local taxes are added at the very end of the transaction, which means you always have to do mental math to figure out what you are actually going to pay at the register. Even better is the dining experience. When you finish a meal at a restaurant in the UK, the server brings a wireless card machine directly to your table. You tap your card right in front of them, select your tip option on the screen, and you are done. Your credit card never leaves your sight. When I tell my British friends that in America, a server takes your physical credit card, walks away into a back room with it, processes the payment, and then brings you a paper receipt to sign, they are absolutely horrified. They think it is an open invitation for identity theft. And honestly, now that I have experienced the British way, I totally agree with them. The fifth thing on our list, however, sounds like something straight out of a dystopian science fiction movie to most Americans. I am talking about the legendary TV license. A few months after I moved into my flat, I received an official-looking letter in the mail. The envelope was covered in bold, intimidating text, warning me that an investigation was underway because my property did not have a valid TV license. I was terrified. I thought the police were going to show up at my door. As it turns out, if you want to watch any live television broadcasts in the UK or use the BBC iPlayer streaming service, you are legally required to pay an annual fee of around £169. This money goes directly to funding the BBC so that they can produce content without commercial advertising. If you do not pay it, you can face massive fines. But what really blows American minds is how they enforce this. For decades, the licensing authority claimed to use high-tech TV detector vans that could drive down your street and detect the exact frequency of the television set operating inside your living room. Whether those vans were a brilliant psychological hoax or actual military-grade tech is still heavily debated, but the sheer idea of a government agency patrolling neighborhoods to catch people watching unlicensed television is completely wild to anyone raised on American media. Moving on to the sixth point, we have to talk about a summertime frustration that drove me absolutely insane when the weather started to warm up: the complete and utter absence of window screens. In the US, almost every single window that can open comes equipped with a wire mesh screen. It is an unwritten law of residential construction. It allows you to let the fresh air in while keeping the bugs, flies, and mosquitoes out. But in the UK, window screens simply do not exist. When the temperature rises, you have two choices. You can keep your windows shut and swelter in the heat, or you can open them wide and welcome a massive influx of flies, wasps, and spiders into your home. When I asked my landlord why they did not just install screens, he looked at me like I was asking for gold-plated faucets. He told me that they are not necessary because the UK does not have dangerous mosquitoes or massive swarms of cicadas. While that might be true, British houseflies are just as annoying as American ones, and having a giant wasp fly into your kitchen while you are cooking dinner is not my idea of a relaxing afternoon. The seventh thing on our list is something that actually makes me incredibly jealous of my British friends, and it highlights a massive cultural divide in how we view work-life balance. When I first started my job here, my human resources department casually informed me that I was entitled to 28 days of guaranteed paid annual leave. I literally had to ask them to repeat it. Back home in the United States, there is absolutely no federal law requiring employers to offer any paid vacation days at all. If you are lucky, a corporate job might give you 10 or 15 days, and you are often made to feel incredibly guilty for actually using them. But in the UK, taking your holiday is not just accepted, it is actively encouraged. People will casually sign off for 3 weeks in July to go sit on a beach in Spain, and their managers will tell them to completely disconnect from their emails. There is a psychological respect for personal time here that is deeply embedded in the culture. Brits work to live, whereas Americans often live to work. It was a massive adjustment for my overstressed American brain, but it is a difference I have embraced with open arms. If you guys are really loving this content and want to support me, please hype up this video, hit the like button, drop a comment about your own culture shocks, and let the algorithm know you are here. It shows so much love and helps me keep doing this. Also, this is exactly the kind of thing I go much deeper on with the people who support this channel directly. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I need the fuller version of this story, join the membership below. That's where I share the deeper thoughts, the more personal side of all this, and the extra bits I can't always fit into the main videos. Quick thing, before we get to the worst two on this list. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Now, let us get into the final two things on our list, which are undoubtedly the absolute worst and most stressful aspects of daily life that Americans find completely unbelievable. The eighth shock is the absolute madness of the British house buying process, specifically the concept of the property chain and the terrifying legal loophole known as gazumping. In the US, when you want to buy a home, you make an offer, you sign a contract, you put down earnest money, and the house is locked in under escrow while you do your inspections. It is a structured, legally binding process. In England and Wales, however, nothing is legally binding until the very final step, which is the exchange of contracts. This can take months. During this waiting period, you are often stuck in what they call a property chain. This means your purchase relies on the person selling to you buying their next house and the person selling to them buying their next house, and so on. If one single person at the very bottom of this 10-home chain has their mortgage application rejected or simply changes their mind, the entire chain completely collapses, and everyone is back to square one, losing thousands of pounds in non-refundable legal and survey fees. But even worse is gazumping. You can have an offer accepted on a house, spend months organizing your finances, pay for structural surveys, and then a week before you are supposed to sign the papers, another buyer can swoop in, offer the seller a slightly higher price, and the seller can legally accept it, leaving you with absolutely nothing. The level of anxiety this causes home buyers in the UK is off the charts, and the fact that the system allows this to happen is something most Americans find completely archaic and impossible to comprehend. Finally, we have reached the ninth and most physically painful shock on our list, the absolute torture of experiencing a British summer inside a house that has absolutely no air conditioning. When you think of the UK, you probably picture rainy days, fog, and cool temperatures. And for 9 months of the year, that is exactly what you get. Because of this damp, chilly climate, British homes are architectural masterpieces of heat retention. They are built with thick brick walls, heavy insulation, double glazed windows, and draft excluding seals designed to trap every single watt of warmth inside the building. But when summer rolls around and the UK experiences those increasingly intense heat waves where temperatures push past 40 degrees Celsius, these houses transform into literal brick ovens. Because central air conditioning is virtually non-existent in residential properties here, there is absolutely no escape from the heat. Opening the windows does not help because there are no screens to keep the bugs out, and even if you do open them, there is rarely a breeze. The heat gets trapped inside the brickwork during the day and radiates back into the rooms all night long. You are left trying to sleep in a bedroom that feels like a sauna, with a tiny desk fan blowing hot air directly into your face. To an American raised on central AC and freezing indoor temperatures, the experience of a British summer is a test of physical and mental endurance that you truly have to survive to believe. It is these tiny, unexpected differences that make living abroad such an incredible adventure. It forces you to look at your own habits and realize that the way we do things back home is not the only way to live. Some of these British quirks drive me absolutely crazy, but others have completely changed my perspective for the better. If you have ever experienced any of these culture shocks yourself, or if you are a Brit who thinks our American ways are the real mystery, let me know in the comments. I love reading your stories.